Should I do your bio again and everything?
Oh no, I
Okay,
don't think necessary.
we're good. We just restarted it. But you know what I'm gonna do? Live from Boston, Massachusetts, it's Dr. Alex Loch.
Okay, hello everyone. Just a quick recap. What we're going to talk about today is your career being a journey, not a destination. So we're going to embrace the fact that none of us know exactly what we want to do when we're 65, 70, whatever age we decide to retire. So we take our career in phases, and we celebrate each of those phases. So a little bit about me is we got the pictures live. You guys can see all those.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So aspects of ourselves that we embrace to make us whole human beings. Some of those important aspects for me are lower left, being a dancer, choosing to have your hair however you want it to look. I think that's something we all need to celebrate. Lower right is my husband and I. So Brett and I've been together for like 17 years. Being gay, being a husband, those are really both important things to my identity. So I lean into those. And then also kind of upper middle is just a professional shot. So for me, that reflects being a physical therapist. That's sort of like the quote unquote career, the kind of thing I've been doing for the last 10 years. So when you do something that long, it becomes part of your identity. So those are some pieces to my career. In addition to blindness. So I'm somebody with a disability. I was born blind. My condition is called achromatopsia. Essentially, to make it really easy, we have cone cells, which are day vision cells, and we have rod cells, which are our night vision cells. I only have rod cells. So having no vision means everything's extremely bright to me. So I squint if it's bright. Um, Poor acuity, so I have to get close to things to see and read them, and then no color whatsoever. So this is me, I would guess, probably age 25, 26, tucked in the back there, when I started getting a little more involved in the blind community and doing some advocacy work in Washington, D.C. So that's actually going to bring me to where I'm going to read you a little story. So this is called Being Led. I've been doing in the master's program I'm in now at Harvard, I've been doing a lot of writing and specific like self-narrative, kind of reflective writing. I wrote an essay for a class. I submitted that to a program in Boston called Tell All Boston, and it was accepted. And I read it live at a theater yesterday. So I'm going to read you what I read some audience folks in Boston yesterday. Okay, so the piece is called Being Led. His daughters had gone with their mom to the women's room. So when Steve asked if I could see well enough to find the men's room, I told him yes. Airport bathroom signs are huge. The Orlando International Airport was no exception. I'd seen Steve's daughter guide her dad from our Minneapolis flight, so I had a rough idea how it worked. Do you want to grab my elbow? I suggested. He held out his hand like it was missing a cup of coffee, and I stuck my arm in the vacancy of his grip, waiting for him to squeeze so I could pull him along. He didn't squeeze. He held the webbed space between his thumb and index finger just above my elbow, soft but deliberate. I started walking, too slow at first, but Steve followed easily, his white cane held vertically, suspended just above the airport tile. I led him across the wide hall and through the maze entrance of the bathroom. Do you have to pick? Do you want a urinal or a stall? I wondered. Oh, just a urinal. What next? Do I stand next to him when he pees? Do blind people need help with their pants? Why couldn't one of his kids be a boy? I wasn't sure what to do, so I guessed. Removing my elbow from his hand, I squared up his shoulders to an empty urinal 10 feet away and sent him off with a gentle shove, the way you'd launch a small watercraft. Do you need me to wait? I called once he got there. Oh no, that's fine, I heard him smile. I left the bathroom, but looked back, wondering how we'd find the sink, the exit, and me again. It's a good thing I'm here. There would be a lot of blind people at this convention, and I wondered how often I would do this the next 6 days. Maybe that was part of accepting the scholarship. At 24, I had met almost no other blind people. They weren't easy to come by in rural Minnesota. My beloved orientation and mobility counselor sometimes forced awkward introductions with kids from other towns or students 4 years younger, but no one left with a new friend. Disabled was not an identity I was interested in claiming. Being disabled was an anchor, not the kind that secures you, the kind that restrains you. I would spend my young college and adult years proving I wasn't like other blind people. I went to yoga classes. I moved to Seattle. I worked a shitty job teaching ballroom dance. I had a serious boyfriend, and I had been accepted to a doctorate of physical therapy program. I was what it looks like to beat your disability. Still, school was expensive, so when handed a scholarship application for the National Federation of the Blind, I resigned myself to filling it out. I earned a state scholarship, but hadn't realized attending the national convention was required. My 4th of July wouldn't be spent with family, but with blind people. Scrapes and clicks of metal-tipped white canes on veined marble drowned out any overhead music played in the lobby of the Rosenshingle Creek. Walls of tall windows stood opposite a long line of registration desks framed by higher plaster arches. The room was so bright I had to keep my dark sunglasses on. Jesus, look at all these blind people. The elevators are that way, spoke the hotel receptionist after checking in the woman ahead of me. Honey, you're gonna have to be a little more specific because that way could mean a whole lot of directions. I was in Florida to accept a check. The strategy was to share just enough of myself not to be rude, but not enough to confuse anyone that I cared. But by day 2, restrained me became bored me. On the hotel bed, I paged through the event's large print convention program. Salsa dance party. You did bring that black v-neck. A dance lesson preceded that party, and it was a big one. Lots of visual demonstration gets used in teaching dance, and for this group, visual demonstration wouldn't have worked. Instructors instead moved from couple to couple, making slow progress through a mass of novice dancers. I'd been randomly paired with a college student from Illinois, and we stood hand in hand, waiting for an instructor to make their way. I think I know the basic, I eventually revealed. This foot back, I said, squeezing the same hand. Now forward with this one, squeezing the other as we found the music's rhythm. Am I doing it? She laughed. You are. Conchita, the lead instructor, had walked over. What's your name? Alex? And you know salsa? I do. Awesome. She grabbed my hand and led me over to another couple. Alex is going to help you two learn to dance. So I did. I taught underarm turns and cross-body leads to PhD students finishing chemistry degrees, to lawyers practicing in New York City, and to parents who had attended the convention for 20 years and were now bringing their children. I showed lead and follow, where hands shouldn't be pulled but held, soft but deliberate. I entered the salsa dance competition with a DC consultant, earned second place, and I let down a teenage girl from Nebraska by telling her I was already in a relationship. My v-neck was heavy with sweat as I took new hands and learned more names. Their smiles told me it was their first time dancing before their words did. Breathless, open-mouthed smiles you never see. People with vision withhold such smiles. Too wide, too free, too unrestrained for others. My smile may have matched theirs, I'm not sure. If not that night, then maybe the nights after, or the next year when I returned, or the year after that. All right, so that was being led. So yeah, acceptance is a journey for all of us. And Barb did such a great job as my orientation mobility counselor, but it took me a long time to sort of like internalize that acceptance. And it's those are things that we always work on as people. And you may have felt like different in any capacity. It doesn't have to be disability. So a lot of people feel like a sense of otherness or non-belonging. And I think there's room to give space to that and to know that there's hope and that can change. So next step. Paths aren't linear. So we're going to jump into the career part of this. We're going to go over each of these phases of my career, starting with the bottom, going to the top. This path happens to look linear in the design, but it is in no way one straight line. So our career paths are zigzaggy. Mine was in particular.
Alex,
Yes.
sorry, it still says being led.
So let's see. Barb, are you seeing the paths aren't linear?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see.
He's easy to listen to. We can just listen to him otherwise.
Okay. Anything show up there?
Not yet.
And you're seeing the slide currently that says being led.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. Interesting. So let's do the old unshare share.
Cross your fingers, everybody.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Chris, then now it's a my issue, not a yours.
Who knows? Okay, so we're seeing your PowerPoint.
Okay, are we seeing paths aren't
Yeah.
linear? Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, paths aren't linear. We're going to go over each of these stops on my path. And I do not think my path is done. So I don't think I've achieved ultimate success, or I don't think the person I am now is going to be the person I will be in 10 years. So this is just sort of where I am thus far in the path. So 2005 to 2009, I attended St. Cloud State University. That was a decision made largely on fear. It was 30 minutes from home. And keep in mind, I was this blind, closeted gay guy who lived in rural Minnesota. So, like, taking a big step didn't really feel safe or like something I was ready for. So, I did something that felt a little more comfortable by going to school close to home. I was an English major and a dance minor. As an English major, I thought I was going to study business in undergrad. I took one accounting class. It was the most boring class I've ever taken. So I decided I don't want to do this business thing. So by junior year of college, I was undeclared for my major, and I got some really good advice from a career counselor that said it's not necessarily about the specific degree you have. Most employers who are looking for college graduates are just looking for a 4-year degree of any kind. So study something you find interesting. And I happened to be in a creative writing class. I was not very good at it, but I did find it interesting. So I thought, okay, I'll be an English major. And I liked dance, so I'll minor in dance. On the right are just skills or things I picked up kind of in each phase of my journey. So at that phase, I think I picked up technique as far as dance technique, writing technique. I picked up writing, which is also there, musicality, which I would use later in life, concepts of creativity, so having to think differently, explore differently, not just memorization of facts, but sort of exploration, and play. And then what you're going to notice is all of these skills or things I feel like I picked up in that phase, they play in later in life. So all these skills kind of compound and add upon themselves. Next, 2009 to 2011. I moved out to Seattle because it's where my boyfriend had moved out to from Minnesota. I didn't have anything specific career-wise, so I had the opportunity to do some travel. I know it's not the best advice to say follow your boyfriend to wherever they go next. It worked out, we got married, so it could happen either way. But in Seattle, I didn't have any specific career I was looking for. I knew I liked dance. At that time, Craigslist was where people went a lot to look for jobs, and I found a job teaching ballroom dance that from the piece was a shitty job. It was not a great situation, but you can take really good lessons and things away from any situation. We did happen to move back to Minnesota, where Brett got a job teaching at St. Scholastica. So then in that year, I danced with the Minnesota Ballet for that year. So in that 2-year span, I feel like I learned the concept of self-advocacy. I had to do that quite a bit in a pretty uncomfortable job. And then the last two, teaching and movement communication, I think those play in a lot together. When teaching dance, I had to be very clear to get people to do what I wanted them to do. So if somebody's doing a movement wrong, I needed to be able to really communicate how to do it correctly. That played in so much with my ability to like instruct patients through exercise later in my life. But I did not decide I was going to be a ballroom dance teacher so I could be a better PT in the future. It just happens to be a skill that I picked up that I can then use later. So again, these skills add. Next up, 2011 to 2014. This was my physical therapy program at St. Scholastica. So I was in a doctorate of physical therapy program. People considering that career or any kind of grad school is you're gonna get to do the things you anticipated you would do, and then you're gonna learn and do a lot that you didn't anticipate. Maybe it's the administrative side of things. It's grad programs are big programs, but again, even if you don't enjoy something in particular, you're learning from it. So at that phase, I learned some leadership. I was elected one of the class representatives. The concept of networking. So I was working with future colleagues. I was going to, conventions and things where I would, potentially meet employers. So it's just the concept of like getting to know other people and form relationships. And then medical training, which obviously you need as a practicing physical therapist. So 2014 to 2024, these were my staff years working as a physical therapist. I worked for a big healthcare system in northern Minnesota. I was in a very interesting role where a lot of physical therapists or practitioners of any kind, you think of working in one clinic. My role was to work in any of the facilities in the area. So that was 11 different locations, anywhere from working in one of the hospitals in the area to the rehab center, occupational medicine, and then any of the number of what they called neighborhood clinics. So it was a very diverse job, which was critical for me because I need to stay interested. I gained experience because working in so many different areas, I got to see patients who were, they just fractured their hip getting out of bed, neurological patients who just experienced brain injury and working at that level, then to the high level professional dancer. So it was really good experience acquisition. I gained confidence working that long and with that many of different types of people. I learned collaboration, the idea of being able to communicate and work with my occupational therapist, speech therapist, physicians, physical therapy assistants, things like that. And then flexibility. In any given week, I would be in, 4 different locations in 1 week. So I got to feel pretty comfortable showing up in any situation and not really feeling too stressed about it. So that was a good skill to pick up. I would say, in reflection, I probably worked in that job for too long. Of those 10 years, I would say maybe about half of them I enjoyed. And then the other half, I just kind of stuck around because it was comfortable enough. So yeah, you sometimes, I think, listening to that thing in the back of your head, if you're not feeling passionate or interested or feeling really bored in a job, it's okay to think about what the next step might look like. My next step happened in 2021, where I started Motive Physical Therapy, which I also call Motive PT. Motive PT started as a side hustle. So I was working full time and then started this company, which was it's an online physical therapy company. And I was continuing to work full time. So where that inspiration came from was during like deep lockdown of COVID-19, when it was like, don't leave your house. So you couldn't really even go to a clinic for medical appointments. So a lot of clinics went virtual at that time if they could. And then they all treated this virtual environment as a placeholder. So we're going to do this until we can get you back in the clinic safely. And then they all returned to the clinic when they could. But what I found is, without knowing what I was doing, nobody really knew what they were doing, but I was still able to meet a patient for the first time, treat them, guide them through exercise, and then discharge them weeks later because they felt better and had improved. So it planted the seed that there is a different way of doing this, and there are a lot of benefits to it. I could treat people who were hundreds of miles away from me, who otherwise would not have been able to come into the clinic. Nobody needed to commute to the clinic. So it was just kind of planting these seeds where I was like, all right, there's something more to this. And during my time at Motive PT, which is also present, entrepreneurial skills, I think, are something I picked up on, learned, and then the concept of sales. So having to, instead of just showing up to a clinic and having a slot of patients for the day, you have to kind of sell yourself and work for your patients. So it's a different model. So I'm going to show you a little kind of our Motive PT commercial. This was something we filmed a few years ago, and aspects of our service have changed. So we'll probably film a new commercial in just like the next year. So here is that. At Motive PT, we're changing the way active people do physical therapy. We're taking PT out of the clinic and bringing it to you wherever you are in a fun, effective, and convenient format. Here's how it works. After your initial virtual body assessment with our doctor of physical therapy, a personalized home exercise program will be delivered to you daily through your Motive PT patient portal. And these aren't the boring exercise worksheets you normally get at PT. Our personalized home exercise plans are fun, educational, and effective videos set to music that you'll do with me. And we know you're busy, so we give you total control over scheduling your PT. With Motive PT, you're able to self-schedule your initial body assessment and any additional follow-ups you need when you need it. And if you don't own exercise equipment, that's not a problem. We will send you our Motive PT Fit Kit in the mail that includes everything you'll need to progress through your recovery plan. At Motive PT, we're gonna get you better and have fun doing it. Okay, so just without getting too in the weeds of exactly how Motive PT works, is I use a lot of asynchronous videos with exercise, everything set to music. I am very playful and fun in these videos. And for me, the biggest issue I was having with physical therapy is people improve most. I think the single greatest predictor of someone's improvement is doing their home exercise program. A lot of people do not do their home exercise programs because they're really boring sheets of paper. So they're uninspiring. People also aren't sure how to do the exercises once they get home because so much information gets shared in a visit. So for me, the solution was, okay, I'm going to make everyone their own calendar after I evaluate them. I'm going to load up that calendar with different videos. Those videos are all going to take them through their exercise start to finish. And it's going to be interesting and engaging enough where they'll actually do their exercises. And so far that has worked. So there is not a service model out there like that. I was not following a blueprint where if I was opening like a brick and mortar physical therapy clinic, I could talk to any number of business owners and say like, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to think about? Okay, what do I do next? And then, okay, look at this model and I do that. So I really had to like employ those like creativity skills, to be able to think like, how could I do this differently? And that was from a liberal arts background, from my experience. So again, skills add up. So next, that takes us to where we are today, 2024 to present. I'm at Harvard Medical getting a master's in media, medicine, and health. The master's itself is, so media, medicine, health is basically using any form of media. For me, that's video. For some of my classmates, it's podcasting, it's documentary, it's journalism, whatever their form of media is. But it's to kind of effectively communicate health to help improve people's lives. So that's where we are today. My takeaways, and these are still to be determined for what skills I'm gaining, but a couple I could identify are self-belief. I now feel really like I can do hard things, and it's one of those things where I submitted an article, it didn't get accepted, but to the New York Post. So it's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. That's okay. You could just try. What's the worst that's going to happen? And then the concept of rigor. So willingness to work really hard at something because you care about it. I would say now is probably the busiest time of my life, but it doesn't feel busy in a way that makes me sad or like deeply stressed or burdened. It's just, I have a really full plate, but because I'm doing things that I care about, that are interesting to me, I'm okay with that right now. So just the concept of being able to work hard, and that's easier if you care about what you're doing. Next, I'm going to introduce just a little bit of a concept. So I'm taking a class at the Harvard Business School, with a professor named Robert Simons. So the class is called Changing Your Life, the Life Choices of Influential Leaders. So we look at a lot of like world-changing leaders, from our history. And what he has put together is he's done a lot of business research and then sort of like extrapolated that to what it would mean for individual characteristics. And he's identified what he calls these building blocks, or these like areas where people put a lot of focus in, or it's like a characteristic or a trait they bring, to their lives and to their professions that helps them become sort of like world changing leaders. So without getting into super like a ton of detail, the first one is investing maximal resources in your interests. So for a lot of people, that's time, and being willing to invest time in something you really care about. It's hard to want to put time into something that is uninteresting to you. Prioritizing core values and beliefs. Often these types of change makers have certain principles or core values or things they really that are important to them that they take forward with me. For me, I would say one of my core values is like the concept of like fun and play. I think it's really important to create sort of like an enjoyable atmosphere and an environment. And it's just how I like to interact and engage with life. So something as simple as play can be a core value. Pursuing ambitious goals. So I don't know if any of you have heard of what are called SMART goals, where when you're setting a goal, it should be the A stands for attainable. But for the change-making leaders, their A would be ambitious. So their goals are just barely achievable or sound unachievable initially. Um, Setting boundaries is the next one, and that's just deciding things you are not going to do. So I am not going to focus on this certain area. I am not going to put resources or time toward this certain area. So it's just kind of identifying, it helps you kind of focus what you're working on. Pushing outside your comfort zone. That's very important for growth, is to get uncomfortable at times. That's part of growing. So if you're finding you're really comfortable, like I was being a physical therapist for 10 years, after a while, there was not a lot of personal growth that I was gaining from it. So I came to a point, luckily, where I was able to push outside that comfort zone. Leveraging personal relationships, I would say that's happening now. You know, look to your right and left. The classmates around you are potentially like great sources for one, personal relationship, but potentially professional relationship in the future. So, and then it's also the idea of mentors, teachers, things like that. And then finally, being open to new opportunities. I think that one's kind of self-explanatory, but not feeling stuck in only doing it one way or only doing one thing. All right. Next, so we're going to kind of start wrapping up with things I wish I knew. I don't know. I will be super honest. If I had heard these things at your age, I don't know if they would have like hit the right way. But upon reflection, these are just things I wish I knew at your age. And that's that you aren't picking a job that's forever. You're picking a job that's for now. And the reason I think that is because you don't have to know what you're going to do, what you're going to be doing the days before you retire. You just pursue something that is of interest and of value for now. And if and when that changes, that's great. And that's part of the process. So we've probably all heard this. The average person changes their career 5 to 7 times. So it's very normal. And those skills you acquire along the way, those are not lost skills. They compound on themselves. So if you do a job and you do it well for a few years, and then you move on to something else, you have not lost those years. You've gained perspective and skills in a certain area. So you get to carry those skills with you in the future. Other things I wish I knew are not to set down your interests. I think that took me a while when I was going into college. I thought, okay, now let's say I was going to study business. I thought, all right, I'm going to be a business major. So I'm going to stop. I'm not going to dance anymore. I'm not going to work on this other stuff I care about or thought I cared about. Now I'm just going to be a business major. And then I'm going to be a business owner. Your interests inform your life. Your interests are your interests for a reason. So interest leads to passion, and passion is what you need to fuel the hard work that you would have to put in to make change. So if you're not interested in something and you're doing it, you're probably not going to do your best job of it. It doesn't mean you can't do a competent job, but it's not going to feel like you want to put a lot of time into it. A quote I like by Simon Sinek is working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And then final interest or final thing I wish I knew is that creativity is not an arts and crafts concept. So creativity, I would say sometimes we undervalue this skill because we think about sometimes people think about treating their job pursuit as like a vocation, like they're trying to gain a certain set of skills to do their job, which might make you a very good employee. And if that's your hope is to be a very good employee, then learning skills can work. But being creative opens the door to like innovation and invention and actually making change. You have to be able to think about something differently. So I would say do things that engage that creativity and imagination. Quote by Einstein is that imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. So, and then a big quote I love by Van Gogh is, I would rather die of passion than of boredom. This is very true for me. If I get bored, oh, I just got it. It's not in my, some people can tolerate that. I am not one of those people. Next, speaking of things I'm passionate about, something I mentioned earlier is you're going to watch a 2-minute dance. This dance is rated PG-13, I will warn you. I danced with the Minnesota Ballet for a year, like within the company. And then I went to PT school, but I stayed involved with the Minnesota Ballet. So I continued dancing. I became their physical therapist at some point. But then I continued dancing every year in like their local version of Dancing with the Stars. So I would choreograph the routine. I choreographed this routine. I was the dancer, and then my partner, who might be like a newscaster or something like that in the community, is the celebrity. So you are going to see me as the dancer and my partner who is a non-dancer in one of our celebrity dance challenges. So here is that video.
Please step forward.
Okay, we won. We won. A spoiler alert. And with that individual, so speaking of networking, that was somebody I had never met. We worked together for like 4 or 5 weeks leading up to this event. That is somebody I was texting with last night because she got an MFA, she is a writer, she put a book out. So it's somebody who I now have a close relationship and I'm very likely going to use as a mentor for writing. So that's just like how life lines up for you. It's really interesting and it's hard to predict. So contacting me, we have a few options. You've got Facebook. I don't know if any of you have Facebook, but you can follow Motive Physical Therapy on Instagram, where Motive PT, or my personal Facebook is Dr. Alex Loch. That says Snapchat, but it should be TikTok, Motive PT. We've got a YouTube page, and then at the bottom is my email address. If anyone wants to reach out to email me, that is fine and great. And that takes us to thank you. And do you have any questions? So I'm going to stop sharing.
Make sure the mic is on. You can hear me okay, Alex, right?
I can, yep.
All right. Let's ask some questions.
What is the most challenging thing that he's went through all of his transitions?
Could you hear that, Alex?
Yeah, the
Okay.
most challenging thing I went through. I think for a long time, there isn't a specific isolated event that comes to mind, but I would say something that's been sort of a barrier or a block at every phase is when I consider how it will look to other people. So I sometimes I pump the brakes, or I'm not willing to push forward for fear that something I'm going to try or something I'm going to do is going to make me look silly or stupid or like I might fail. And it's just, I think more and more I learned that your life is to be led for you. And you other people's opinions or perspective, that doesn't really matter. So like letting that be the thing that shapes or limits your life. I've done that a lot, and I would say at the end of the day, it's not worth it. So I would say just kind of working through that mentality has been a consistent barrier and something I have to address every time I make a change in a career.
Getting out of your comfort zone, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
With all these experiences, what would you do different if you go back like 5 years ago?
Can you repeat that? I think I heard most of it.
Like with all these experiences you have, what things would you do different if you go back like 5 years ago?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I'm hearing right, it was in all of my experiences, what would I have done differently? Um, it's such an interesting question because I think we all go through our path and journey for a certain reason. And like all the things we learn, even if they're like the failures are actually very important to help you improve and grow. So the only thing I can think of that I would have done differently was left that job that I did for 10 years sooner. However, had I left that job sooner, I would not have been working there when COVID happened. I would not have been exposed to this, maybe concept of virtual or online physical therapy. So I'm actually not sure I would have my business today did I not have to had I not just like endured that for 10 years. So I think it sounds like such a stupid answer, but I don't think I would change anything because I needed all of those things that built up, like all the frustration, all the irritation, all the impatience that I was feeling. I needed that as fuel to be able to take the next step. Equally, there are times where I thought, gosh, I wish I had nothing against St. Cloud State, but I know academically I could have done something different. However, at that time in my life, I wasn't ready to. So in some ways, I wish I was ready to pursue a more challenging academic environment, even though I learned a lot and gained a lot from my undergrad, but I wasn't ready at the time. So that it was, yeah, there are certain things I can think of like, yeah, that could have been an opportunity. But I don't think I was in a place at any point where I could have changed. And equally, I could have said like, gosh, I never should have taught ballroom dance. That was the worst job of my life. But again, the things I learned from ballroom dance, as far as like teaching movement and how much I hated it. I hated that job by the time I left it, and I needed to feel that hate to decide, all right, I've got to figure out like the next job situation, and it has to feel a little more like a career move versus just moving to another job. So that's my thought. I'm gonna go with nothing.
Ridiculous.
I have a favor. Would Barb mind turning her camera on for a minute? I want y'all to meet. This is my sister-in-law, Barb. So if you can't pronounce her last name, that's my maiden name that nobody can ever pronounce. But I really want to thank Barb for connecting us. And I think what Dr. Alex has said is just perfect for you guys where you're at right now. Just to hear his story and his perseverance and to have fun with life. And so, Barb, thank you.
I have a comment
Yeah.
for Dr. Alex. Having known you since you were a baby and having been your teacher and your mobility person and traveling on buses and everything else over the years.
She's in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So I'm thinking her Wi-Fi is not great right now.
Mm.
Noticed about you is that when you face a barrier, You take that barrier and you challenge yourself to it. You
Mm.
look at it as the next step. You don't say, oh, I can't do that. I'm in a park. So
Mm.
when you see a barrier, you take that barrier as a challenge. So Wi-Fi is bad. I'm in Alabama.
Thank you, Bar. I think I got the sentiment, which is so sweet. Yeah, I look at sort of next steps as challenges. And I think that's true. I hope that's true about me. And I approach those challenges as like learning opportunities. So I'm not typically too afraid. There's the concept of failing and it makes me nervous, but I've gotten to that point in my life where if I'm scared to do something, that usually tells me, okay, you got to do that. And right now, that next thing for me is, so I just did a live reading for the first time yesterday. Comedy is something I'm really interested in right now. So I actually think before I leave Boston, I'll probably like do an open mic or two, just because I know it makes me a little nervous, but I'm very interested in it. So I think I'll explore that a little too. But thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Barb. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, one more, Alex.
Dr. Alex, just more of a comment. So I'm the director of career services. So your story about your birth counselor, of course, it hit a soft spot for me too. But I love the way you talked and tied back a lot of the things that you value as some of the skills that you have that come from your liberal arts education. We're the liberal arts core at SMSU, and I'm always pointing out to our students, especially students who have a pretty particular idea of the classes they want to take and the direction they want to go, just highlighting the importance of those skills and how they can be applied. And I thought you did a really great job of highlighting and emphasizing and giving really concrete examples, so that when students kind of think about the things that they're doing in class that maybe don't seem like things that they are going to quote unquote use in the future. I really appreciated that highlight. And so thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. No, and I believe it 100%. And I will say in my doctorate of physical therapy program, there were 36 students. I think I was maybe one, or maybe there were two of us who had like a humanities or a liberal arts background, and I was the class valedictorian. So, and that was critical because I had a different ability and skill set to think differently than other people, and that served me academically and professionally. So I agree, and I think it's critical.
Excellent. One more. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since you're someone who is busy, you said you like to stay busy. How do you keep a good balance between like your work, personal relationship, and like the other passions and interests you have?
Yeah, the answer is I don't always keep a healthy but what I have found is doing things, the additional interests, like for me, one of the life-saving things was when I was really not enjoying my job as a physical therapist for a while, like kind of mid-career, those mid-10 years. And I thought, oh, I need to take time for myself. I need to just lay here. I need to watch Netflix. But then what I found was like taking on more activities that aligned with my interests. So choreographing a musical, doing more dance productions, starting to get involved in like activities I loved. I actually found those things, even though I was like, my schedule looked fuller, my like being and heart felt fuller and more at ease because I was doing things I really cared about. So I think that's a lesson too, is there came a point where COVID was kind of this for everybody, where you were doing a lot and then you figured out you kind of had to stop doing a lot, and then you came back to the things that really you did enjoy and you did like, but you kind of stopped doing those things that like you were just kind of going through the motions at that point. So I would say if it's something that's interesting, if it's something you care about, then it's not going to feel like a burden, even though it's more time. It's going to be sort of life-giving for you. So I would say lean in.
Anybody else? All right, let's give him one more big thank you.
Thank you all for being here and coming. Did you happen to, Chris, did you take a picture at all of the students or the group or room or anything?
Yes, I took a half a dozen, so I will forward those to you.
I would love it. I'll put you guys on my social media.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again so much, Dr. Alex.
You
Have a great
bet.
rest of your day.
Thank you guys. See you.